Hey everybody, welcome to Lettermen Live, presented by Byers Auto. I'm Austin Ward. We've got a very special guest with me this week, former Ohio State defensive tackle, chasing that NFL dream still, Tracy Sprinkle, and he's also still got his hand in that How's She Gonna Eat? The co-founder, CEO, chairman of the company, chairman of the board. Seems like that's going pretty well too. I always get a kick out of this story. For anybody who's not familiar, Tracy, let's just kick off the show. Where does the brand come from? How did this come to be?
Well, the story is kind of funny, me and some of the guys, Taekwon Lewis, Jalen Holmes, we were about to go out to eat, have a casual dinner after a workout, and Taekwon Lewis came up to us like, man, well, if I go out to eat, how's she gonna eat, And so we started laughing like, man, whatever, man, you go ahead. We ended up going to dinner. We put it as a hashtag the next day, and it took off from there.
I remember you guys started doing it while you were in school, and we're like, nobody knew what you could assign your own meaning. Like, does it mean you guys are chasing the NFL? Is it just your girlfriend needs to eat? It's like you can kind of do whatever you want with it, right?
Yeah, and that's how we started it off. We just let people think what they wanted to think. We didn't really release the story, and we started using it as motivational purposes, though. Provide for your daughter, your mother, your wife, whatever the case may be, and it's actually going pretty good for us. And
so with the three of you guys, or a couple of you guys that are still handling that, Jalen's been doing his thing in Minnesota, Taekwon's making some tackles in the NFL. You guys are kind of spread out a little bit. Yeah. I would imagine that keeps you guys close, but also how's the day-to-day work with that as you guys try to get that business and that brand rolling?
We communicate every day. Whatever's going on throughout the company. I have a supplier that I constantly talk to throughout the day, to keep stuff going with the website, with the social media stuff. But Jalen and Taekwon is always informed, before I make any decisions. Obviously, right now, I'm a free agent in the NFL, so my schedule is not as busy as theirs is. So I kind of handle the day-to-day stuff, but they always know what I'm doing before I make a decision.
That business side, you got your hands on that, and then you've also found out professional football, as everybody says, that's a business too.
Yeah.
The last year or so has probably been, eye-opening. You can describe it your own way, but what has that process been like as you've gone through, trying to make a team last year, training camps, and then the AAF and everything that happened down there? Just that whole process, what has that been like for you?
It's been humbling, it opened my eyes up a lot more, like you said, to the business side of things. It's not just a little kid chasing the NFL dream or chasing being a football player. It's a way bigger approach. And I've learned that, throughout my career in the NFL and the AAF. And now my approach is just so much different. I take a more business approach with everything I do, so I think it's going to help me moving forward.
That ending, I know it wasn't ideal. I think there were a couple games left in the season. You guys had to figure out a way to get home and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you probably also maybe got what you hoped out of it. I think you had a sack in every game, leading the league for defensive tackles in that category. Yep. That experience as a whole, do you look at it as a positive? How do you view it at this point?
For sure it was a positive. Obviously the way it blew up, nobody expected that, but it gave a lot of football players the opportunity to play football again. Some guys were out. I was released after the preseason, so I was out for maybe 4 months. You had guys that was out for years, and had an opportunity to put themselves on that stage again. So the AAF was a blessing. There's no bad blood from Tracy Sprinkle. I had fun doing it. I had fun out there making plays and, put myself to be back in the NFL again.
Yeah, talking to Tracy Sprinkle here on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. You guys, probably wanted to chase a playoff, though, didn't you? I mean, chase a championship. Nobody wants to end it with a couple of games left in the season.
Everybody wanted to chase that, just to have that thrill. But, the reason for the AAF was to set people up for the NFL, and I think that was a positive that happened after it.
All right, so as you take that, you made some waves. I think you recently spent some time with Kansas City, doing some OTAs and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. What's next? I know that you're staying in shape. You want more opportunities, and I think they're probably going to come. But how do you juggle this now as How's She Gonna Eat look to get to a new landing spot?
The transitioning period is always tough, from team to team or career to career. It's always tough. But for me right now, my mind is just so set on, I know I'm going to be back in the NFL, so that's my number one priority right now. And then right after that, it's How's She Gonna Eat, It's business on both sides, so I'm training every day, getting ready for the NFL, when the time comes, and in between I'm building my brand up so it can be built, with or without football.
Yeah, all about business. We'll let you make sure that you can help pay some of those bills right now. Tell them where to find How She Gonna Eat.
Man, howshegonnaeat.com. You know, if you go to Instagram, How She Gonna Eat LLC, Facebook, How She Gonna Eat LLC, Twitter, HSGE_LLC. That's us.
There you go. One of the Rushmen doing it on both sides there, got the brand out there, trying to represent somewhere in the NFL. Coming soon. Look for Tracy Sprinkle on a roster. I can bet you that's going to happen pretty soon. For the next guys that want to wave on, we're going to get some recruiting update from Birm. So we thank Tracy for hanging out with us on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Let's kick it over to Birm. All right, time for our Ohio State recruiting update from our Lettermen Row CEO of Scouting. I think that's his title. It changes every single week, but that's what we'll go with this week on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Birm, it's been wide receivers week for us on the site, and there is something I think pretty significant going down in wide receiver recruiting on Friday. Set the stage for us.
Well, Friday, the number one receiver in the country, Julian Fleming, the top-ranked receiver prospect in the class of 2020, makes his college announcement. He'll be deciding between Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Penn State, Georgia. The Buckeyes have been, in my mind, the favorite to land him since November, since he made his second trip to the school back for the game against Nebraska in the middle of the season. So I think it's one of those sort of defining moments for Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, and this Ohio State 2020 recruiting class to show people that there is not a drop-off at Ohio State, and that for the big-time recruits around the country that are still considering Ohio State, it's still safe to do so. And I think that there's right now this overwhelming surge of SEC superiority complex happening again on the recruiting trail, where if Georgia's involved or LSU's involved or Bama's involved, then all of a sudden there's no chance for anybody else. And I think this is a really big moment for not just Ohio State, but for the Big Ten to once again say that, hey, we're not going away yet.
If Julian Fleming follows your crystal ball prediction there and joins the Buckeyes, this has been a pretty significant year for Brian Hartline. You touched on Day. He's obviously the head coach, and that's where most of the credit and spotlight goes. But the wide receiver position, the way it's been recruited, I think a lot of that success should be attributed to Hartline and the way he's worked so quickly. What in your mind has made him so successful in that role? Because I remember last summer when he took that job on the interim basis in July, everyone said, well, is this NFL guy, is he going to embrace the rigors? There was no concern about teaching the position, but will he want to recruit? Can he recruit? That was the question last July.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is not that Brian Hartline has shown that he can recruit, but he's shown that he actually likes to recruit. And he's a guy that is young enough to connect with these players around the country, to connect with their families. He's a former NFL guy, so he can walk into a living room and has that instant credibility. But beyond all that, what he's done is he's shown that he actually enjoys the process. And I think that is probably part of that athlete background where you really like putting in the work because you realize what the work results in. And I think that we're seeing the evolution of the game of football and of college football, especially. You see all around the country programs hiring former players, programs bringing in guys that are younger and have a little bit more of an ability to connect and show kids, hey, I've done what I'm asking you to do. And I think that's been the biggest advantage for Hartline so far. But what he's really been able to do is show kids, I know exactly how to get you to where you want to go. And he's done it with a very direct approach. He's not a guy that's selling smoke and mirrors. Clearly, the development of KJ Hill, Johnny Dixon, Terry McLaurin, and Paris Campbell play a huge role in that, because he can walk into a living room and say, this is what I've actually done with players of your caliber. And now it's about going out and showing that he can start a product in the recruiting end of it and then finish it on draft day. So that's going to be his next task. But right now, the two receivers that he has committed in Jackson Smith and Jigba and G. Scott would be perfect complements to what Julian Fleming provides. Those three bigger outside guys, three players at Ohio State would say were in their top 5 total wide receiver targets for the year, even though Jackson Smith and Jigba's ranking is number 30 on the wide receiver list, but that's way low for what he's capable of and what he's done on the field. So I think that it just goes to show that Urban Meyer made a really smart decision in promoting Brian Hartline, and Ryan Day made a smart decision in retaining him.
Talking Ohio State recruiting with Birm on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. All right, get away from that position for a second if you can and if you want to. What's coming next for Ohio State on the recruiting trail? I think you've mentioned in Dotting the I's, the daily notebook on Lettermen Row, that there might be some key visitors coming in soon.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see a really busy month of June. June 6th is the first camp date for Ohio State, and I think that day itself is going to be really interesting as far as how the class shapes up at tight end. You should see Luke Lachey, the son of former Buckeye great Jim Lachey, and Joe Royer, the Cincinnati Elder tight end. Both of those two on campus sort of competing, I think, for the spot in this class. One of those two, I believe, will be offered that day and will accept the offer. And then you start to look around at defensive linemen. There's a handful of young defensive linemen in Ohio, including Ty Hamilton, the younger brother of Davon Hamilton, who was offered by Ohio State on Wednesday, who's going to be camping in Columbus along with Brandon Taylor from Lima, Gage Keys from Hilliard-Davidson. So there's a lot of local kids coming in, fighting for their spot. And then we'll talk about this a lot more leading up to the June 21st weekend. But that weekend is turning into a mega weekend for the Buckeyes. There are already double-digit official visitors coming in, not to mention a host of the top 2021 targets. And Kyle McCord will come back over to campus. I will probably have Marvin Harrison with him. Obviously the Jack Sawyer and his band of brothers from the Pickerington area will be in town. So it's turning into a really pivotal weekend, the last third weekend of June for Ohio State. But it's going to be interesting because I don't think they're going to do a Friday Night Lights in June, and they may not do one at all this summer. So that weekend is turning into sort of this, I don't want to say barbecue type weekend where but it is a bonding weekend. So that's it's very unique to me that they're deciding to do that and bring in all of the official visitors and the 2021 biggest targets. So that's going to provide a lot of fireworks at the end of June.
You mentioned that not being Friday Night Lights. If that's when all of the big-time recruits are not there, that probably signifies that and you hinted at this, that there might not be one at all. Is that significant? Has that event outlived its usefulness, or what could maybe explain why that might not happen?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that as long as the kids are coming to campus, if they're kids you already know that you want in your program, having them camp and work out doesn't really matter. So as long as they're there, that's what matters. Obviously, for the fan perspective, fans have really enjoyed the opportunity to go to that camp in the Horseshoe and see these players, but watch guys work for offers and that kind of stuff. But there's so many other camp opportunities in June 6th, June 6th all the way up to the 21st. There's 6 or 7 different camp opportunities. Kids will be in and out of the campus and out of the WAC visiting. I don't think that it's outlived its usefulness. I think that with the change in the recruiting calendar, which is now there's this giant month-long dead period from the end of June to the end of July. Mm-hmm. Friday Night Lights used to be the last weekend of July before camps began around the country. So now with that dead period, it sort of forces them to change things. And, similar to how they adjusted in the fall and winter, which was not to have major recruiting weekends. They instead wanted to have, smaller groups where they could come in and build relationships. That's what they're looking to do instead of highlighting the camp and Friday Night Lights as the focal point of that weekend. It's about getting to know Ryan Day.
Gotcha. That's why we turn to Birm for all that recruiting insight. Great stuff, as always, on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. For Birm, for Tracy Sprinkle, appreciate everybody hanging out with us once again here at Lettermen Row. I'm Austin Ward. We are going to see you again next week.